Hey YouTube, this is Nashtaters. Welcome back to another episode of War of the Visions. So today we're going to be talking about something that I felt like needed to be talked about a long time ago. In fact, when the first game started on the global, it was something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. Last night I had a stream and there were a lot of people that came in and we were just talking about random things. And they brought up some really good ideas that I felt like will make the topic of conversation for today's episode of Friday Free Thinking. Let's get into it. So today's topic of conversation is going to be about the top 3 things that I feel like are going to be great improvements for this game. But before we get into those 3 things, let's talk about some honorable mentions. First thing I really would like to see that this game will improve on will perhaps give us the thing that have been given to us a lot of times after either a brand new release of equipment like this one here, or perhaps reruns of older equipment. And I know this is something that they've been pushing for us to do as events, quote unquote. But I feel like the secret book reward quest should at this point just be implemented into our day/training sessions. Something I think perhaps they can consider. Now, the most recent challenge that we did on this game was the challenge in which we had to fight a bunch of those sharpshooters, and it had Salir, it had I forgot his name, something Inzold or whatever, the one with the big two-hander sword, and of course Mediana was like sort of the quote-unquote final boss. There was different variation of levels. One was, I believe, 50 or 60. The next one was level 80. And then the last one was level 90. Now, I'm actually thinking that is a great idea for this game. Ironically enough, we actually had this conversation when we were chatting in my guild. And my guild leader, as many people know, he's pretty popular in this game. He's one of the top whales, so to speak, or I like to call him now spender. So he was a heavy spender, or he is. And we were actually just talking about jokingly that perhaps content they can release in the future will have, your normal mode, your hard mode, your brutality mode, and then what we called at that time a whale mode, right? So I guess if we were to use that in more modern terminology, it would be like the heavy spender mode. And I don't think that's a bad idea, to be quite honest. Now, I know many people think that games like mobile games / gacha games are supported by heavy spenders, but that's actually not true at all. The percentage of spenders are actually not as high in accordance to what people think. The majority of players in most games are going to be free to play. And for this game, they're very smart. They do a lot of good marketing strategies. And I think one of the ones they use is the implementation of ads. And the fact that they give us a lot of different opportunities to get free items simply by watching a 30-second ad or maybe a 15-second ad, I think is a great way for the companies to generate revenue. However, that being said, the heavy spenders should also be, in my opinion, sort of catered to. And I think adding a super high difficulty level, it's a really good idea for, I think, all future events. And the reason being is because you don't necessarily give them rewards that they already have plenty of, right? I think a suggestion would be perhaps give them some sort of title or some sort of icon. So, like for example, when they go into multiplayer mode, they can have a little icon next to their names or something like that, suggesting they have accomplished. I think this is a great way to reward the spenders and a great way to kind of show the other players, to get them to work harder, so to speak, if they really wanted to earn those titles. Now, personally, I think it makes sense to have bragging rights if people are spenders. Now, some people might disagree with me on that, but it is, at the end of the day, what it is, right? Sometimes the spenders like to spend for whatever reasons they want to spend, and then the people who choose to go to play the free-to-play route, it's obviously whatever they wanted to choose. I don't think we should discriminate against gamers in terms of what they want to choose as their playing style. At the same time, one might think it's discrimination if we cater to their specific needs, but I think it's kind of necessary at times, because you want to make everyone happy. Giving lots of free items to everyone benefits, obviously, everyone. But giving tiny little bonuses to people who spend a lot of money, it doesn't mean they're being catered to in terms of giving them bonus items. Simply giving a title, I feel like, could be just enough to make him feel satisfied. After all, this is a product, and loyalty, brand loyalty is something that almost all marketings usually consider. Now, speaking of ads, many of you guys probably do the energy refill using the 3 ads that we have to watch every day in order to obtain 90 energy. Another way to generate free things will be doing their video summons. Now, personally, I feel like this video summon is a bit skimpy. Okay, and the reason I say that is because, well, if we took like the actual reward is 200 for 100 ads. Let's be honest, that's 2 gems per ad. Come on, that's 2 gems per 30 seconds, folks. There's no reason for me to do it. And the only reason I do it is because recently I've been running low on gems, so I figure I can try to boost myself. Yeah, I understand they give us skip tickets. Yeah, I understand they give us gold or gil. But here's the situation. The game is pretty generous in terms of giving us tons of gil. Am I right? And obviously the game is very generous in giving us tons of gems. And last but not least, every so often they give us a good supply of skip tickets. So I know this is a bonus, I know this is optional, but I feel that improving the rewards for these ads is a great way to really make everyone happy. And if they're so generous as is, then why not give us more with the ads? After all, these ads, I'm sure, are generating the company tons and tons of money. I actually venture to say that the ad revenue is perhaps way more than any spender could ever offer to the company. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing that I feel like will be a great improvement for the game. Now bear in mind, disclaimer here, this is all my opinions, and obviously last night's stream, a lot of folks actually brought up some of these ideas, so I have to credit them as well. I think everyone has their own feelings towards the game and have their own way of thinking about what could be improved. But one thing we all came to consensus was the next 3 things I want to talk about. Now, not in any particular order in terms of importance or priority, anything like that. But I think these are the 3 things that a lot of us felt like could be something that could really improve this game. First thing I want to talk about is, of course, perhaps implementing secret maps / hidden maps. Just like the whimsy shop that I triggered before I started this video. It's something we have to trigger as we're farming. Now, obviously in the story mode, there are going to be different things we're looking for, right? With so many chapters. And one thing we all notice as players that they tend to rehash same maps over and over, telling us the different maps of the story. Personally, I don't think it's a huge deal, but for many players that seems a bit off-putting. I know perhaps it takes a lot of work to do coding, and a lot of work to do programming to implement new maps. But I think that something they can actually plan to do in the future is make it more plentiful in terms of variety in maps. Now, I know everyone does a lot of farming in story mode because that's unfortunately the only really plays you can do to trigger whimsy after you're done with your daily dungeons. So in my honest opinion, if those of you that have been playing Final Fantasy Tactics back in the days, the only way to generate enemies is walking around the map, and you can do quote-unquote random battles. I think it'll be a great idea if we can just, while we're farming among the different maps, we have a chance to trigger a secret map. Now obviously they could implement all kinds of secret maps. In the original Final Fantasy Tactics, one of the most crucial and challenging maps was the map of the 10 monks. You had to fight 10 monks, and man, those things were annoying because they can buff each other, resurrect each other, heal each other, each of them do tons of damage, and all of them had range attacks, and you only have 5 units. So it was a big challenge for many players. That was kind of sort of the secret maps, if you will, that allow players to quote-unquote complete the game. And I feel like that would be a very nice touch in this game. My suggestions perhaps would be, you know how we have so many factions in this game. I think it would be great if we can trigger one of those secret maps. Let's say they're maps equal to the number of factions. If there are, let's say, 8 factions, each time we trigger one of these maps, we can randomly get one of those maps in which we must fight all the units from that specific faction. And if you accomplish it, you can perhaps get some pretty good items. Maybe some shards for vision cards, hint hint, and maybe some shards for some units. Of course, this will all be random. Even if they gave us just shards from older units like Stern and Ayaka and things of like that nature, I think it's still a nice touch. And I think that will make this game a lot more pop, if you will. I know I talked about creating an equipment video for a long time. Perhaps I promised that in many of my previous videos. And more I thought about it, there are already people doing that or have done it. And to be quite honest, I can't stand the crafting system in this game. In fact, the equipment system is much like an entire game in its own. I think it's one of the worst systems on the planet in terms of an RPG. And I felt like it would be kind of torturous to put everyone through the same thing again by simply explaining something that no one really wants to touch. And for that, I really decided never to make that video. But I feel like it is something the game can drastically improve. Now bear in mind, on the Japanese server, they're always and constantly making improvements. Anything I say today may not necessarily reflect what we could be getting simply because the Japanese servers are rolling things out. Now I know some of you guys might say, well, the Japanese servers already improved this and already improved that, etc., etc. I'm like, okay, that's great. But I think it's important to understand that the global developers are in fact pushing the global server and perhaps in a different direction. We're already getting exclusives that the Japanese server does not have, and chances are some of the exclusives on the Japanese server we're not going to get due to perhaps cultural reasons. So whatever the case is, I don't think it's a good idea to expect anything or everything from anything that's implemented on the Japanese server. All that being said, however, I know for a fact that the Japanese server have already improved the equipment system. But here are my suggestions. If that has not been done already, perhaps give us a one-click crafting system. Simply by looking at what we already have, for example, the sword Teleje. I laugh every time I try to pronounce that word. So, for example, there's a click button here. You want to get a +5. The game will automatically check to see if you have enough materials to craft that. And then of course, all you have to do is give us the option to select what type of subtype we would like. Accuracy, aim, whatever. And then you click, boom, one click and it's done. Why make us sit here and spend 30 minutes to an hour crafting something? Now, I understand I mentioned before, cultural differences aside, people really enjoy having a sense of accomplishment. But to be honest, the terrible equipment system is also creating us, or quote unquote, forcing us to do a shit ton of farming that perhaps isn't really necessary. We have to farm tons of recipes, we have to farm tons of materials, and many people feel like that is kind of the sluggish, kind of a dreary way of playing a game. Now obviously, in many ways, the developers feel like that is a rewarding way for us. And I don't necessarily agree or disagree. Whatever the reason is, it's okay by me in terms of farming. Personally, I enjoy farming. It gives me a great way to kind of just relax, perhaps catch up on my shows while something is running. But I also understand not everybody has that luxury. So maybe that's something that can help us. Give us more recipes through different quests. For example, pop-up quests, right? Why not? And perhaps give us more rewards in terms of specific harder content to farm, i.e. people can try to do those harder content and get perhaps more rewards. Whatever the case is, the equipment system, in my honest opinion, definitely needs, or perhaps really should go for a huge overhaul. The very last thing I want to talk about is something that perhaps many people can argue with me on this, or debate, whatever the word you want to choose. That is, have a permanent system in which we can climb or do lots of challenging maps / dungeons to get monthly rewards. Of course, ideally, this specific encounter will reset monthly. And I think the end reward for that would be perhaps a unit selector ticket of some kind, or a vision card selector ticket of some kind, or simply a guaranteed ticket of a UR of some kind. Now, one way of looking at this game is, it takes a lot of work to build a unit, am I right? Perhaps weeks to actually complete a unit. You have to farm job equipment stuff, you have to farm shards, which you can't really technically speaking farm readily. You can get 2 per day. And then of course you have to level them up. And then you have to do the weapon efficiency. You have to do a lot of work to get 1 unit up. And as a content creator, it's very hard to showcase units unless it takes, a couple of weeks. And even then, perhaps that's not doable. So I think 40 shards of a unit given per month, it's not a big deal at all. In fact, if you gave everyone 1 unit per month, it's not a big deal. Because we all understand, you simply cannot build units fast enough in this game. Game teaches us that patience, in fact, is a virtue. So we already have Porcelain Tower, you probably will say. Well, we already have that. But the thing is, they treat that as an event, not something that is steadily available for players. Every day we log in, we farm. And pretty much that's all we do. I think having some sort of new challenge that's there monthly, and perhaps it's a good way for us to gauge how progressive our accounts have been. It's a great idea. Many games implement this. Summoner's War, Epic 7, and perhaps many other games use that as a formula to make sure that people have something to do on a daily basis other than obviously farming. Now, obviously this can be done in a very creative way, and right now I can't really think of something off the top of my head of what they could do to implement this content. But it doesn't necessarily have to be one of those dungeon crawls or a tower. It's simply something that can lead to different things. For example, you fight a bunch of enemies on one map and boom, it opens up something new. Or we can do it in waves. One thing I thought about was perhaps it's one nice map or like a castle of some sort we have to explore. You have to fight enemy units in one room, and more waves of enemy units could jump into that specific room, and perhaps can take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to clear for that specific room. At which point you can either just quit at that point or keep going. I think it's a great thing to do because I know many people don't enjoy autoing everything because it takes away the fact that you can use strategy. So many people talked about in the stream that perhaps we need more content that we need to manual. I remember watching Cabbage's video and he mentioned that he really enjoys content sometimes where he can just sit down and manual and play the game for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes trying to beat a specific encounter. I think this is a great idea. And if you can somehow combine that with other elements in the game that people are loving, we have a winning product, ladies and gentlemen. So what do you guys think? Do you feel like anything I've said makes sense? Or perhaps you strongly disagree with something? Whatever it is, put your comments in the comments section below. Maybe put your own suggestions or addition to what I've been saying. Either way, I seriously welcome people to really join this conversation because many people know I love this game and I feel like this game have a lot of room to grow and there's a lot of potential here. My understanding is this game hasn't even reached 1 year anniversary yet, but why not try to improve it even more? I think that's all the time for this video. I hope you enjoy this kind of content because I know I certainly do. It really stimulates my thinking abilities and of course, creativity, right? And as always, take care of yourself or your loved ones. And remember, time is your most valuable resource, so cherish it. Nashtaters and his family out. Peace.